Today, we're looking at a red ink by Herbin Rouge Caroubier. We'll go with that one. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, there's timestamps down below so that if you're in a hurry, you can skip around. But if you got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. You can also follow me over on Instagram, and if you're new here, I would invite you to subscribe. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put it into this Nimicine Singularity with a fine nib. I write with it for a day, then use it to take the notes for this video. This first writing sample is done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper in order to have some kind of standardization to look at. There's additional writing samples later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it came in a vial like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X 450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X 750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is just a little lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, a very nice shading all the way through this writing with 12 seconds to dry. The medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, great shading all the way just like the extra fine with 13 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both do show some color variation in left to right, not a lot, but it shows up very well in the writing. Tomoe River. No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a little bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra 19 seconds to dry. The medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. 20 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both shows no color variation, and we're not getting it in the writing. And Rhodia, with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer some shading throughout some of this writing with 12 seconds to dry. The medium is just a tad darker than the extra fine, but nowhere near as dark as the stub. With no feather spread, halo sheen, it does also offer some shading throughout some of this writing. 14 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for the medium doesn't show color variation, although we do get it. The extra fine does, and we did. I agree with Vita that we learn a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And it's very interesting because there's this kind of salmon-y tone at the bottom. Not salmon like pink of the salmon. It's like a peachy salmon. Maybe we'll go with a peach tone at the bottom. Ignore that whole salmon-y tone bit. There's a peach tone at the bottom that's coming up. We get a water separation and then this red at the top. Now the one on the right that I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water, that peach tone is much more as a line there and not moving a lot. There is a little bit of a water separation again, and then the red comes in. Now, the red didn't travel as far as it did in the original chromatography, but what it does show is that the red is going to not stay when wet. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page and how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I would not use this in a note-taking situation. For the amount of blowout that has occurred, I'm afraid of losing that information. Now, that's not surprising from the chromatography and from what's happening with the water here. The water, we see that it is completely lifting, almost showing the white of the page coming through. The upper edge, you start to see the white of the paper. That's only 30 seconds of water just sitting there, and it only took water to get it out of my pen. Now, pen flush, if you actually needed to use it, works even faster than water, and you see a ton of white of the paper coming through. The 1/3 bleach solution, which you're not going to need, does completely remove it from the paper. I test ink viscosity with a tilt test that I'll link somewhere. Now for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Herbin Rouge Caroubier has a viscosity of 1.29, making this a ridiculously wet. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples, and for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Herbin Rouge Caroubier has an average dry time of 15 seconds, so despite it being ridiculously wet, its dry time is normal. Instead of finding inks that look like Herbin Rouge Caroubier, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. So I went with a very outstanding blue, Private Reserve's Sonic Blue. The second writing sample is done on yellow Rhodia, P. Berger, and White Lines paper. Here we see the yellow Rhodia paper to look at what kind of tone change we may go through for having the yellow backdrop, and there's none. So while this is a very translucent ink, because you can see the lines very clearly through where the ink is put in the swab, it does manage to maintain its color very well, even with the changing color of paper in the back. It just means we've got a very nice dye there. Now, P. Berger is a French rule student grade paper. We do get a lot of bleeding with the stub, with the extra fine, not nearly as much with the medium, which is odd. It does mean that there you couldn't use the back of the page, but with a medium you likely could. The 1.1 has feathering, a lot of feathering. It's gross feathering. No spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine is a lot lighter than the stub. With no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade, 1 second to dry. Yeah, I just want to back up and say on the 1.1, where I said it's gross feathering. It's gross because it's tiny all over and really consistent, but it's really small, just always there. I just felt like there was a need to kind of clarify on it because I didn't want to blow over it as it's gross like it's huge. It's just consistent. 1 second to dry for the extra fine. Medium is darker than the extra fine, about the same tone as the stub. With no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade, 3 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show no color variation, and we don't get it. And last up is White Lines. Now, the white lines on the stub, we do get little bits of bleeding in, but not through, and we do get very light ghosting, but not something that would stop you, for the most part, from using the back of the page. Just the stub you probably wouldn't if you did a page of writing with a stub. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 3 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade, 4 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show no color variation, and we didn't get it, and that's all that I have for the writing sample. So what do I think of Herbin Rouge Caroubier? This is a solid performing, nicely shading red ink. Now, I do find it to be a bit light for my taste in a lot of the writing, and it's really going to be up to you if this is the right kind of red for you. It is very well behaved, as all Herbin inks are. So what nib and pen are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? A dry pen really put down too light a tone for me. I found the ink to be very translucent a lot. So I really want to use a very wet, fine or medium pen to put enough ink down on the page to keep it easily readable. If you've enjoyed this video and made it this far, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. And if you didn't like it, give me a thumbs down and tell me why. Thanks for watching.